Welcome back to another video on Daniel. Now, no discussion of Daniel would be complete without mentioning a man by the name of Porphyry. So who is this man and why is he so important? Well, he was a pagan philosopher born in 234 AD in Tyre, and he was a very early critic of Christianity. He wrote a series of books known as Against the Christians, which was 15 volumes long, so a very extensive breakdown as to why he believed Christianity was false. And interestingly, this work was potentially funded by the Emperor Diocletian, who persecuted the Christians severely, and on top of that violent persecution, there is some evidence that Diocletian wanted Porphyry to also mount an intellectual case against Christianity as well, and thus funded his work. Now, 2 years after Porphyry's death, Constantine became the emperor, and needless to say, this changed everything for Christianity in the Roman Empire. Constantine supported Christianity, and he actually ordered all of Porphyry's books be burnt in 333 AD. And interestingly, this was the first banning of books made in the interest of Christianity. It's also very likely that Constantine also ordered the execution of anyone found in possession of Porphyry's work. We'll talk more about that at the very end of this video. Now, since Constantine burned all of Porphyry's works, the only source we have for Porphyry today is from the Christian apologists who attacked his work, primarily Eusebius, Augustine, and Jerome. Augustine, writing about Porphyry, says the following, quote, "Porphyry was the most learned of the philosophers, although the most fierce enemy of the Christians," end quote. So you're probably asking yourself now, why are we even talking about Porphyry on a series on the book of Daniel? Well, Porphyry, in his 12th volume of Against the Christians, attacked the book of Daniel. And so distressing was this attack that in response, Jerome wrote an entire commentary refuting Porphyry's claims. Wilken, in his book, The Christians as the Romans Saw Them, writes the following, quote, "What Porphyry wrote about Daniel was so revolutionary and so disturbing to Christian interpreters that his critics sought to refute him in detail and at length." Jerome wrote an entire commentary on the book of Daniel in defense of the traditional Christian interpretation. He mentions Porphyry's work on the first page and cites him at length in the commentary, responding verse by verse to his interpretation. Indeed, it is Jerome's commentary that is our chief source for Porphyry's interpretation of Daniel, end quote. Alright, so let's now ask the question, what did Porphyry say exactly about the book of Daniel that was so controversial? Well, what Porphyry contends is that Daniel is too accurate to be prophecy. It must have been written after the events it describes. In other words, Daniel is not written in the 6th century during the Babylonian captivity, as the book itself claims, but rather in the 2nd century during the Maccabean period. And this is most evident in chapter 11, where we have an extremely detailed breakdown of the activities of the Seleucid and Ptolemaic kings. So Porphyry argued that Daniel must have been written in about 165 BC. Thus, everything in verses 3 to 39 is historically accurate because Daniel is simply recording past events. He's pretending to be prophesying future events, but the reason why this section is so accurate is because, as Porphyry claims, he's simply recording what's happened in the past. But then, in verses 40 to 45, this is historically inaccurate because Daniel is actually trying, but failing, to predict future events. Now, it's really incredible that Porphyry put forward this idea in the 3rd century, since for the last 40 videos, we've been demonstrating the truthfulness of this theory. You would have thought that this idea would have first come forward in the 19th century, when people started to first critically analyze the Bible. But it didn't. It first came forward with Porphyry in the 3rd century, which is absolutely amazing. As Casey writes in his journal article, quote, "Centuries before the advent of modern biblical criticism, Porphyry already knew that the book of Daniel was a Maccabean pseudograph." Likewise, John J. Collins, in his book The Apocalyptic Imagination, writes the following about Porphyry. "The crucial argument on the date of Daniel was already formulated by the Neoplatonic philosopher Porphyry in the 3rd century. Porphyry argued that Daniel was not written in the course of the Babylonian exile, but in the time of Antiochus Epiphanes. His basic point was that Daniel predicted accurately the course of events down to the time of Antiochus Epiphanes, but not beyond it. This argument has stood the test of time," end quote. Alright, let's now read what Porphyry wrote himself. But remember, Constantine burned all his books. We are therefore going to have to depend on Jerome's commentary on Daniel to figure out what Porphyry wrote. And Jerome begins his commentary with the following preface, quote, Porphyry wrote his 12th book against the prophecy of Daniel, denying that it was composed by the person to whom it is ascribed in its title, but rather by some individual living in Judea at the time of the Antiochus. By that he means Antiochus Epiphanes. We continue to read. He furthermore alleged that Daniel did not foretell the future so much as he related the past. And lastly, that whatever he spoke of up till the time of Antiochus contained authentic history, whereas anything he may have conjectured beyond that point was false, inasmuch as he would not have foreknown the future. End quote. Now, let's really appreciate what Jerome is saying here about Porphyry's interpretation. He's saying that everything from verses 3 to 39 is accurate because it's in the author's past. But everything from verses 40 to 45 is inaccurate because it's in the author's future, and he is not able to predict the future accurately. In another place, Jerome writes the following about Porphyry, quote, but this very attack testifies to Daniel's accuracy, for so striking was the reliability of what the prophet foretold, that he could not appear to unbelievers as a predictor of the future, but rather a narrator of things already past, end quote. And that is where we're going to conclude this video. If you've enjoyed it, can I please encourage you to click that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe. And now, if you truly do want more of this content, can I also encourage you to become a patron? Click the link in the description below and become a patron today. You will receive a lot of additional content. And remember, if you're not in a position to give, please just make sure you hit that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe. But if you do become a patron, let me now talk about the additional content you're going to receive. Not only are you going to receive a lot of additional past videos, but you're also going to receive an extra part of this video itself. For the remainder of this video, we're going to talk about Constantine and Porphyry. We're going to particularly read through Constantine's decree to burn Porphyry's books. We're then going to talk about why Porphyry decided to attack Daniel at all. And then finally, we're going to talk about some mistakes that Porphyry made as well. So if that sounds interesting to you and you want to support the channel, please consider becoming a patron. Click the link in the description below and become a patron today. For everyone else, thank you for watching until the end, and I'll see you in the next one.